Hi students, this tutorial is to help you add programming to power a second LED and or a second servo. So as you could see in our original program that we had here, everything is only set to 1. Now, if you have lost your original programming, go back and watch the video on how to rebuild this right here. So this video assumes that you already have the original program accessible on your computer. So you'll notice that we've only added in instructions for things plugged into port number 1 for your LED and for your servo. But if you've added a second LED into port number 2, and maybe a second servo into port number 2 for a second moving object, it won't do anything until you give it new instructions. So we're going to need a couple more LED blocks and a couple more servo blocks. Okay, so if we're adding a second LED, most likely you will have plugged it into port number 2. So you need to make these instructions say set LED port 2 to 0 to whatever. Okay, so let's say you want your 2 LEDs to blink together. Well, one of these is going to have to turn the number 2 on all the way. That should be 100. And then one of them should be turned off all the way to 0. So if you want these to turn on at the same time, you're going to want it to go right after your LED number 1 instruction. So we have a new block that says set LED port 2 to 100. I'm going to put that right after the number 1. So now we're saying turn LED number 1 on and turn number LED 2 on, and then do something with the servo. We'll deal with the servo later. Now, in the second half, after the half-second pause, we're going to go in and tell it to turn LED 2 off right after you've turned off LED number 1. So it's going to turn LED 1 and 2 on and LED 1 and 2 off at the same time. Okay, so that should help. Now, the servos are similar, okay? But servos are a little trickier. If you're trying to get things to move back and forth the same, then and they're both aimed in the same direction, then you can do the same. We're going to need to set the instruction to servo number 2. Yeah, my head's in the way there. So make sure we're sending the instruction to servo number 2. And we can try the same angles, 45 and 135. So just like I did with the LEDs, I can put an instruction for servo number 1 and 2 together before the pause, and number 1 and 2 together here. Now, if your servos are pointing in opposite directions, like this way, you might have to switch these two numbers, because otherwise they'll be moving like opposite each other. You might want that, but if you want them to go together like this, you may have to go in and make that like 135 up here. Whoops, 135 up here and 45 down here. This is the sort of thing that you're going to have to experiment with. Okay. Now, you won't really know if it's right until after you try it. Okay, so anytime you make a change to your programming, I highly recommend changing the number right here so it shows a new number, so you always know if that is working. So once you have that done, I recommend that you download it, hook up, link your microbit if you haven't already done that, and then click on download, and it'll zap the program to your microbit, and then you can see how it's working. And if you don't like the way it's working, then you go in and you change the numbers here. What you want to make sure is that you have instructions for both LED number 1 and 2 up here, if you have 2 of them, and for LED number 1 and 2 down in the second section. If you have 2 servos, you want instructions for both servo 1 and 2 up here and for servo 1 and 2 down here. Okay, so that gets you to the basic function of 4 different items if you're going that far with it. Okay, I hope that helps.